Good morning, friends. I'm delighted to be with you today, with you in this modern kind of way. Today I'll be reading from the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what has been planted. A time to kill and a time to heal, a time to build up and a time to break down. There is a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. It was named the Ferreteria Soñando Juntos, the Dreaming Together hardware store. And it was perfectly named, for it represented wild and large dreams for a small but mighty group of women in Chacraseca, Nicaragua. They were women who had grown up in Chacraseca, where the average family income is $1 a day, and where women have been stuck in cycles of generational systemic machismo that have kept them largely uneducated, untrained, and unable to access any options for their futures. They lived in makeshift houses with dirt floors, worked all day as laborers in the fields, and raised children they often couldn't feed because whatever they earned had been paid to the man, the husband, the father, the brother, who owned them. Some of them had never even held $1 in their hand, much less had money they alone decided how to spend. And most of them were so isolated, they'd never had another woman to talk with, to communicate with, to dream with. That was their world. But it wasn't the world they dreamed about. In 2009, JustHope met with a handful of these women to talk about their needs. JustHope is a nonprofit whose mission is to create global partnerships that empower critically poor communities like Chacraseca to improve their lives. So what we heard when we gathered with these women to listen to their dreams not only surprised us, it appalled us. It angered us, and it inspired us. We need a way to make sure we can feed our children or buy them shoes or school supplies, they said. We need a way to have cash that doesn't belong to our husbands, that isn't used to pay for cockfights and beer. So, JustHope started a microcredit program, making small loans to women, $50, $100, and training and empowering them to start and run small businesses, raising pigs or chickens, opening a small store on their porch, selling tortillas or firewood. Their ideas were endless and their energy boundless. Some of you were part of that. That first year, JustHope partners joined together to fund 3 bank circles for 30 women. All of that came from small donations, $25, $50, $100. What may have seemed like small, insignificant amounts, unless you consider the African proverb. If you think you're too small to make an impact, remember the mosquito. The impact of those small gifts on women who received the loans was incredible. Carolina bought medicine for her son with severe asthma. Martha bought the first chair she had ever owned. Elena paid for glasses for her 5th grader, and Paula left her abusive spouse and probably saved her daughter's life by doing so. Those loans literally changed lives and their world. Less than a year after the microcredit circles opened in Chacraseca, the 30 or so women who had received loans and opened small businesses came to JustHope with a new dream. We think Chacraseca needs a hardware store, they said, and I saw heads shaking around the circle. People in Chacraseca had to pay 50 cents and ride the bus 10 miles into town to buy nails, tape, tools, anything they needed to make small repairs or fix or build things. Clearly, a local hardware store made sense. And we will manage it, the women added quickly. These women who just a year earlier had never held $1 or managed any kind of business had the chutzpah to believe that they could open a commercial enterprise. So together we created a plan. JustHope would fund the building with a donation, $10,000. And we would also make an interest-free loan to the women for the inventory, $6,000. All 30 women in the microcredit program lined up and signed the note, committing to share in both the successes and the struggles of their hardware store. JustHope spread the word among its partner groups. The first congregation donated $500, just a fraction of the $16,000 that we needed to build the dream. But remember that mosquito? That little donation became the first of a movement of donors. And within weeks, with men in the community watching from the sidelines, laughing and joking that store would never last 3 months with women running it, the walls went up, the roof went on, the shelves were stocked, and one of the few young women in the community with a college degree was hired as the manager. In the fall of 2010, Dreaming Together hardware store opened its doors for business, and no one came. By this time, the men in the community were angry, scared, threatened, confused. Within less than a year, the world they had known was gone. All over their community, women were individually opening small businesses and making them successful. And now, right in the middle of their community was this symbol of just how much things had changed. A commercial enterprise designed and built and run by women. The men weren't laughing anymore, but they were boycotting, refusing to shop at this abomination of their culture. Rather than discouraging the women, this moment became their call to solidarity, creativity, and stubborn hope. The women organized to promote the hardware store throughout the community. They started selling basic grains, rice, corn, beans, so women didn't have to travel to León to buy supplies. And pig food, so that local pig farmers suddenly became hardware store customers. Slowly, sales increased. Weeks turned into months, and the little hardware store that could didn't close as predicted. Men started dropping in, just to see what the store had and maybe making a little purchase here and there. But by the end of their first year, the Ferreteria had more men than women buying its products. That year proved to be a watershed year in the social structure of Chacraseca. What happened with the struggle to open and sustain the Ferreteria transformed the way women are viewed and treated in Chacraseca today. And more importantly, it transformed the way the women saw themselves. Together, they had worked for a dream and realized it. Together, they had rejected disparaging labels, resisted discouraging expectations, and revolutionized women's perceptions and places in their community. That little hardware store had changed their world. Over the next 8 years, the Ferreteria struggled mightily. They struggled with not having an adequate understanding of how to plan inventory. They struggled with a limited understanding of accounting and a lack of transportation to purchase and deliver inventory. They struggled with not having the reserves to stock up. But even in the midst of the worst moments of that struggle, the women refused to give up. La lucha sigue, they would declare in the face of some new problem or crisis. The struggle continues, and that was a statement of determination, not resignation, as they continued to find new ways to overcome problems by experimenting with new ideas. When selling hardware and basing grains wasn't enough to pay the bills, they started selling used clothing too, and then bicycle parts, and then later freshly prepared hot food to go. When school children in their community couldn't get into León to buy school supplies, the Ferreteria started selling them. When some of the men in the community refused to allow their wives to hold microcredit meetings in their homes, The Ferreteria became a meeting place, a place to share their stories, and an incubator for learning to use their voices. Soñando juntos, dreaming together in Spanish, can also be translated sounding together. And sound those women did. When homophobia in their community resulted in the abuse of a young transgender man, the Ferreteria hired him and became his haven while he attended college. Eddie graduates this year with his degree in nursing. The women persisted in the face of every hardship, and they became a symbol in their community of resistance and resiliency, of stubborn hope. The Ferreteria is still open, people would say when things got tough in their own lives. And it wasn't just Chacraseca that benefited from the dreaming together, sounding together hardware store. It also served as an incredible learning lab for JustHope. We learned and relearned how important listening is, especially listening to the voices that are missing in a context, the voices that have been silenced or hidden or denied. And we learned how critical ongoing accompaniment is. Without one another, the women would never have had the courage or the stamina to stay the course. And without ongoing encouragement and solidarity from their North American partners, they couldn't have continued to dream new dreams. Along the way, we also learned some of the finer points of banking laws in Nicaragua, and more than we ever wanted to know about Nicaraguan labor laws. We learned that sustainability is different in a poor context than we think of it in our own, that real sustainability has far more to do with collaboration than it does with independence. The Dreaming Together hardware store would have turned 10 years old this fall. But there is a time to be born and a time to die, a time to build up and a time to break down. In May, JustHope and the community leaders in Chacraseca and the women of the Ferreteria made the painful decision to close the hardware store. 2 years of civil unrest in Nicaragua, followed by the outbreak of COVID-19 in that poor community, made keeping it open impossible and dangerous, even for a group of 30 superwomen. If we aren't careful, we could think about the Ferreteria as a failure, as a project that didn't make it. But I don't believe that. In fact, I believe it was perhaps the most important and impactful project that JustHope has had in its 13-year history. It served the women, it served the community of Chacraseca, and it served JustHope, all well. And now, the building the women built to house their hardware store is being cleaned up and readied to serve a brand new, as yet unknown purpose in the heart of Chacraseca. They say when a star dies, it explodes and scatters its stardust all across the universe. That's how I will remember the Dreaming Together and Sounding Together hardware store of Chacraseca, Nicaragua. As a shining star that was a beacon of light in its living, and in its dying will scatter stardust far and wide. There is a time for every purpose under heaven. Amen. Friends, the past 3 years have been incredibly difficult for our partner communities in Nicaragua. They have also been difficult for JustHope. Because of civil unrest in 2018 and 19, followed by COVID-19, our group trips to Nicaragua have been canceled and our fundraisers scaled back or canceled. We have exhausted our reserves, had to furlough much of our staff, and reduce our programming in Nicaragua. We need your help, mosquitoes. We must now depend solely on your donations, small and large, to keep our most essential programs, our microcredit banks, our community clinic, education support, and our community farm, going in Nicaragua until we can resume trips sometime in 2021. Please make whatever gift you are able today so that together we can keep on changing worlds. Gracias.